jump in. Again, Pamela Gold, whichever side she's on, goldevolution.com, awesomeness, quality conversations happening on topics that will help us all. Bam.
Things if only we were better at, right?
Yeah,
Things
amen.
only we had more clarity and skillfulness around.
Exactly.
Awesome.
And I'm Melanie Curtis, putting our stuff so you'll know who we both are.
In case this is your first one, last week we had an awesome conversation about meditation. And this week we're talking about taking things personally.
Yeah.
And how tricky that is, and layers upon layers of taking things personally, that we're all somewhere in that, right?
Mm-hmm.
That work.
Ideally developing skills of how to not take things personally so that we can not sort of slip into fear around whatever that is. Because that's the thing. If I think about taking things personally, I hear that and I go, it's a complex subject. I feel like at the core of it for the person experiencing the thing is that it's fear.
And the pain, right? Because you're fearing the pain.
Fearing the pain and also fearing
of someone not thinking you're good enough, not respecting you enough, like all that judgment around, that pain. And it's such a juicy, for me, like it's one of my favorite things to talk about. Did you ever read the 4 Agreements?
I did.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So that's one of the 4 agreements, is not taking things personally. And like, I read that when I was really young and I was like, okay, I'll work on that.
Yeah.
And it's hard. Like, it's so hard. And there's been different periods of my life where I thought that I had it nailed.
Yeah.
Now I know I don't have it nailed. Now I know that like there's an infinite amount of work, it's seemingly, to do around it, because it's like always in that moment when we're in our ego, when we're identifying with something that is limiting, that isn't true, and we don't realize it when we're doing it, right? Like we're in that moment of presence where we think that we know what's going on and we're reacting and feeling that way, but that's actually not what's going on. It's hard.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like the idea that when we do that, we give our power away. And I say power and I mean it positively. Like, we're good people, so it's tough to like, say, how to describe this, but like when someone else's opinion of us matters, which is totally normal. That's
totally appropriate, totally normal. We should care on some level, right? Like we should on some level care. We don't want to be assholes and like not care what like there's this beautiful middle path that we want to find, right?
Exactly. I mean, it's just one of those things where it's like, okay, why does this particular person's opinion of me matter? It's just like in general, if we even talk about like humans as like tribe people, it's so deep that we want to be accepted and included. And I go back to a lot on safety in the world. Fear obviously is something I talk about a lot, given the skydiving part of my career and everything like that, but just in personal growth and working with clients on a life coaching perspective and me growing myself, it's like, oh, for me, it always comes up as that fear. It's like, I feel it as fear. And so then it's like, okay, wait, stepping back and going, okay, wait, I'm safe in the world, no matter what the outcome here, unless we talked about this, I think last week, unless there's literal physical danger.
Right. And I think I want to differentiate between behavior and opinion, right? Because we can take opinions personally or not personally, and we can take behavior personally or not personally.
Yes.
And like opinions, it's like whatever. Like you can just get to a point where like, I don't care what someone thinks of me. But behavior is different. We need to have boundaries around behavior. And that's one of the ways that we get kind of stuck sometimes. Like, wait, I'm not supposed to care when they treat me so badly. No, because behavior is different than opinions. Like behavior, having appropriate boundaries is really, really important. So it's like, again, like this differentiation between taking something personally and having boundaries is a really important part of the conversation too, right? Because that's tricky for most of us. Like where does the boundary fall?
Sure, absolutely. At least for me, I always want to like think and go, oh, think the best of someone else. And like, I tend to over assign, and it's not to say there's not, that sounds like judgment. I don't mean it as judgment. Like I tend to, my old, like before I'm like working out all of my own stuff, a lot of what I used to do and why I would find myself in painful situations or interactions and not be sure how to handle those is that I would totally assign meaning to people's actions and go, if they loved me, if I were good enough, that type of thing. Again, the depth of those things.
Or if they were good enough, because we make things personal too, right? We don't just take things personally, we also make things personal, right?
Tell me, what do you mean?
So taking things personally is when we are kind of saying whether I'm good enough, right? We take it personally, like it's about how good enough we are. And then we also do the same thing to others. We make it personal, and other people do that to us. They make it personal. Like, I'm sure you've been in a situation where someone like makes it personal when they say no. It's not like in our head that we're saying, oh, they think we're not good enough. They're actually saying to us, you're not good enough. They're making it personal.
Oh,
and so and we do that, right? Like we do that all the time when we judge others and say, well, if they were better, if they were good enough, they wouldn't allow this to impact how they're treating me, right? Like I'm sure you've had this in your life. I've had people recently, and it's the hardest is when they're really intimate relationships. Like the closer we are to someone, the harder it is to have this kind of spaciousness around all this. And I had a really close person in my life that like really treated me with so much disrespect and so much like lack of care. And it was a constant struggle to stay ahead of my thoughts, ahead of my judgments around if they were good enough, if they were better, like they wouldn't treat me like this. Like, how can they be treating me like this? Like, it was so painful for me.
Sure.
And my mind wanted to understand, my mind wanted to kind of assign if, that, therefore this, to keep me safe in the future. Like that's how our minds work, because our minds are wired to keep us safe. So when something painful happens, our mind wants to understand it and assign some like, truth and causation so we can avoid it in the future.
Definitely.
As opposed to kind of surrendering and being like, I'm not going to make this personal. This isn't about whether that person is good enough. They just are where they are. Right.
That's huge.
And so I think both parts of this conversation are important about like taking things personally and then catching ourselves when we make things personally, because it's kind of the same thing, opposite sides of the coin, but it's the same trap that we fall into so frequently.
Yeah, it's so funny. I was talking with with another client the other day about how it's very typical for like nurturing people to take things on themselves, to experience the fear of I'm not good enough, or the fear of the sort of incorrect perception of you. Like I see myself and know I'm doing my very best. I'm trying so hard to make sure everyone, knows that I'm always trying to do the right thing, stuff like that. And so when that happens, that we're perceived differently, that's very scary. But we never, not never, but like how it's typical to not assign the same harshness to another person.
Yeah, we're always harder on ourselves. I mean, most of us hopefully are harder on ourselves than we are others, but there are people obviously that aren't, like narcissist people that are, they walk and nothing they ever do is not good enough. It's always the other person, right? That are assigning that blame. And those people are just stuck in victim mode, and we're not like that. Hopefully the people that are, I always say like people who read my book, read your book, listen to us, like, you at some times in your life will be dropped down into victim mode, but most of the time you're not, because you wouldn't be, resonating with us if you were really fiercely stuck in victim mode, fiercely stuck in the idea of like blaming others. Like you take responsibility for yourself, and that's how you start to rise up and become empowered. But I want to spend a little more time talking about the pain underneath the fear. So I think it's such an important thing, because we get stuck in the fear because we don't want to face the pain. And one of the ways to get out of this cycle is to face the pain, like that someone doesn't think that I'm good enough, or that in this second, like if you're going to like judge it linearly, I wasn't good enough. Because there are times I make mistakes all the time. I don't know about you, Mel, but like there are like on the daily, there's times when like, technically speaking, if someone was like judging like how I do moment to moment, there's plenty of moments when like, I'm not good enough. Like I dropped the ball, right? Like that I wasn't as skillful. So like, facing that reality.
It's a constant practice. Holy shit, perfection does not exist. And that's the thing, like releasing that. Yeah, that's a whole other thing.
And so like facing that truth, that like there's gonna be a lot of moments when like, technically speaking, if I had a judge following me around all the time, I'm not good enough. But that doesn't mean that I'm not good enough. Like there's this like a deeper definition of who we are. And that's why it's so important thinking about like, well, if you're stuck in your ego, you are identifying with these like moment to moment performances, if you will.
Yep.
And you're not identifying with the deeper truth of, but I'm not that. Like I'm so much more than what I was in that moment. Like people who make a mistake and then like that mistake defines them. Like our mistakes don't define us. Our mistakes are all growing opportunities, right?
Yes,
so to get to a deeper level of awareness around like who we are and what makes us so, right? Because our mind will keep trying to analyze and will get us stuck in this trap. And it all goes hand in hand with taking things personally, because if you are allowing those thought processes, that's when you take things personally. Or if you're doing it to someone else, that's when you're making things personally, making things personal or making things be personal, right?
Yeah, I think it's important what you bring up about feeling or experiencing the deeper pain. And it's
like, I'm not perfect.
It's fucking painful.
Yeah.
It is super painful to even try on the idea that we're not good enough, quote unquote. And I
moment to moment, right?
Like, and I'm just saying, like, in general, like the experience of really feeling that is excruciating.
It's excruciating. It's like way worse than getting a shot, right?
So I'm going somewhere with this, is that like, I think a key part is not that we need to go through life, oh, I have to go and feel I'm not good enough, because that's a part of the thing. I think it's a part of the thing, the part of the process, in that only in experiencing the pain of that thought can we understand and really know that we can survive it. So we become less afraid of the feeling. So if we talk about the fear of the feeling and the fear of people perceiving us as so, which tends to be evidence that we take on, well, if they think we're not good enough, then maybe I'm not. I really trust this person with their, lots of other things. I fucking respect them. I have them really a high view of them. So if they think I'm doing something not awesome, well, shit, maybe I'm not awesome. So it's a totally understandable thing. Maybe it is that there's a place where we want to grow. Maybe there's a place of clarifying perception or whatever. But the idea of like having that experience of pain and feeling it, crying, like just
moving through it, like not fearing it anymore. Because that's the thing, like this facing our deeper fear thing. And I know you're so on board with this, but like that's the work. Like, and to not fear that, like, there's going to be lots of moments when I'm actually not like the best at something, right? I'm not getting the gold, right? I'm not getting the gold.
We're not perfect.
Not perfect.
Yeah.
And having people in our life that are on board with that, right? That like go easy on us in those growing moments when we drop a ball or we handle something with not as much skill as we aim to, that they support us and be like, it's cool. Like, you're not perfect. I knew that already. That kind of mentality, that's to me kind of the secret kind of art of moving out of the mindset of taking things personally. And so often, like, the whole point is that we do it without being aware of it. And so that's why I want to talk about the pain, because whenever we feel fear, we want to like get as close to it as possible to figure out like, well, what is it exactly that I fear here?
Right.
And in this case, like when we're taking things personally, we're fearing the pain of not being good enough, not being loved by this person, not being safe, as you bring up, because back in, the primeval, days, like, like if you were excluded, if you were cast out of society, you would die. Like you needed the group to survive.
Correct.
So there's like real authentic reasons why we fear this.
Yep.
Just like I'm working on with my daughter right now. My daughter, who's 11, is like super scared of getting shots. And she knows that like, it's not of service to her to be scared of it. And so she bravely is like facing it and trying to desensitize herself to it, so she doesn't freak out when we go get the shots. And in life, doing that with all our different fears, that like, there's a reason why she's scared of something shiny and sharp coming at her. Like it's going to hurt. Of course, it makes sense. Yep. But we need to override that. And it's the same thing with taking things personally. It makes sense that it's uncomfortable and scary when we're not awesome and getting the gold, makes perfect sense. So what is the work that we have to do around that to start moving through it? And I don't know about you, but I remember like a distinct, like several year period when I was working on this, when I like very uncomfortably would be like, I'm just me. Like, I'm not perfect. I'm not, sometimes I'm inappropriate. Sometimes I like say the wrong thing and I drop many balls because I'm really disorganized with my calendar and like messy in life. Like, I'm just me. And I hadn't yet really moved through it to the point where it wasn't like, so, I mean, it's still painful when I mess something up, especially if it has consequences, of course. Sure. But like most of the time, moment to moment, like, and people who know me and love me, it's like, you know, I am who I am and I'm not perfect and I'm growing and I'm committed to that growth. And I've worked through a lot of that pain that I hadn't yet, you know, worked through.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny. I like a good example for me in terms of working through that stuff. I go back to writing I write a monthly column for a magazine called Blue Skies Magazine, and I have for almost 8 years. I'm super proud of that. And I just love that. I'm really proud of that I feel like it's a big deal to be able to do that. But why I bring that up is that when I first started writing that column, I'm not joking, it would take me like 3 days to write a 600, 800 word just column, single page column, because I was so in and I didn't have the skills around that perfectionist slant in my own personality where I was like, okay, I'm going to be seen by like the entire skydiving community. Like this has to be perfect, you know, like not really. I wasn't like saying that to myself literally, but that's what was under the surface. And so I had to work through and coach myself, like sticky notes. You know, content is king. It does not have to be perfect. Like I had that shit around my apartment for real to try to get and create some frequency of the alternate thought. Like, yeah, okay. It's not like it's, again, the Stuart Smalley thing is that it has to have some kind of kick to it. So I did resonate with, it doesn't have to be perfect. Like I really did even then resonate with, it doesn't have to be perfect. Like I'm not going to die if the sentence doesn't flow perfectly or whatever, but it was way more difficult. It just shows that over time, as we work the skills and we work on and consistently practice the mindsets around, we're okay in the world, we're capable, we're safe, you know, we're lovable, loved,
You're
whatever.
So lovable.
So lovable.
No, but it's true. It's the fear that slows us down. And there's a reason, right? Like we're wired to survive. Our brain is going to do everything possible to make sure that we survive.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that keeps us in survival mode and not thriving, right?
Sure.
And so that's the work, and learning, getting to a deeper place of clarity and trust, you know, of yourself, of your instincts, that, you know, knowing when your brain has thoughts that are not of service, or if it's something you need to spend some time on and look at closer. You know, that's the work. And it's so cool because it's so powerful, you know?
It's just, it frees us from this. If we talk about like, why are we even talking about this? Why the heck does this topic matter? It matters because we want to, both ourselves and ideally whomever is listening, help us all have a more, like a happier,
shinier,
more, peaceful,
more manifesting, powerful
more
life. Yeah.
Positive, more joyful life. Like that sounds very potentially cliche.
No, but you know, like if you're any given moment, if you're afraid, if you're in a fight or flight response, right? You're either fighting, you're angry, you know, you get angry. If you think that someone said something that's disrespectful, you get angry.
It does not feel good.
It does not feel good, right? You're not showing up with love. No. And maybe that person said something not skillfully. They were tired. They were hungry. And like by us going easy on them, it'll save us the whole fight because they didn't mean it. They were just not, they're not perfect. I'm not perfect. They're not perfect. No one's perfect.
Exactly.
So being able to kind of override that taking it personally or making it personal reflex, it allows us to like show up in life with love and collaborate, be creative together, laugh together, like share joy, you know, like learn together. Like, I mean, it's just, it frees us up to live life to the fullest, as opposed to being like, you know, in that kind of rat race of dealing with our fight or flight response, not having deep, healthy relationships, because this is exactly the shit that torpedoes our relationships.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah, it's funny, right? Because the other side of that, I agree with everything you just said. I would echo it myself. I think what maybe people, and certainly what I've had to work on myself, is I feel like for me, just how I'm wired and made up, it's easier for me to be like they didn't mean it. I do not demand perfection. I no way would want to put that on someone I love and care about. I
wasn't wired that way. I was like, y'all suck. Like as a little person,
see,
I was on the offense.
Oh my God, I love that. That's hilarious because we're so.
I was not the easiest little person.
Oh, I was too easy, and that's the thing. So like, it's that calling us back either from your extreme of like "fuck you," no, or my extreme of like, oh, everything's fine always, no matter what. Well, no, there is a happy medium, and like you point to, of being in conversation and in a healthy relationship, which requires action and communication and discerning what are my boundaries and behavior and what is something I want to say, I you know what I mean, is okay to put in like a work in progress category. Like that's I think what's toughest.
Yeah, I mean, and it's a perfect segue to kind of the other, I think, piece that is so hard is like our brain and everybody else's brains, instinct to judge, right or wrong, good or bad. Like that's how our brain, handles living, handles being alive and figuring out if we're safe or not, if you're going to go closer to this or if you're going to pull back from this. So our brain is constantly wanting to assign that linear, is this good? Is this bad? Is this right? Is this wrong? Do I want to get closer to this person or do I want to get farther away from this person? And that's totally natural and it's important. And the key is to use it and just tweak it slightly where we stay in kind of an assessment mode or investigator mode, staying open-minded and curious as opposed to judging, right? And when we judge, we close the door. That's it. Like you are an asshole. As opposed to you were an asshole, but I'm an asshole sometimes too. Right?
Yeah, I think the distinction in judgment is that I always make this distinction when I'm working with clients just so that they know where I'm coming from in terms of that word, is that it's one thing to judge someone, like you said, as right or wrong. That's bad. That's no good. AKA you're no good. That's like what shuts the door. Judgment that's healthy in my personal view is the judgment where I'm judging simply for myself what is right and wrong for me. And it's all good what other people do. And I think it brings us back to, it's funny that I mentioned my column because I wrote a column about this, about how do we discern situation to situation. I made this whole metaphor about, remember that show Deal No Deal where you did?
Of course, I love that show.
Right? So you pick the freaking $1 million suitcase and you're like, yeah, deal, done, right? Easy, right? You pick the penny briefcase, you're like, done, no deal. Hell no, right? Easy. What happens in those middle briefcases? What happens in that middle ground is like, how do we stay calm? How do we rest and be able to make clear and conscious decisions? And for me, it comes back to trusting myself, and trusting my capability trusting myself, as like a loving person and caring about others and being okay with how it's perceived because I know it's coming from a good place, but also trusting my ability to take in information and make decisions as best I can, situation to situation.
Exactly. And that's how we stay calm, right? Like talk about this all the time. It's like figuring out to get to a deeper and deeper place of trust with ourselves, respect and trust with ourselves. That's what enables us to stay calm in those situations where like, it's messy. Like, wow,
and the
this
only
is
way
messy, painful, scary, messy situations where I'm like, and I literally, again, like I remember the beginning parts of this practice for me, I would literally like, this is tricky. Like, and you breathe out, you're like, that whole like shake it off. This is a tricky moment. Like just come back to your breath in those moments. Cause it's like in the beginning when you're starting to shift to being mindful around your responses instead of reacting, right? When we start to feel that kind of, this is not as safe. I'm not
Oh,
feeling
yeah.
as safe, or I really feel like this person is like being disrespectful, or this doesn't feel safe. This doesn't feel good. Even more recently, I remember beginning this year, I had a really tough conversation with someone. And I remember saying like, I'm not feeling safe right now in this conversation because I was getting overwhelmed and I didn't have the skills actually to like be graceful and like stay in the conversation. And so I just had to like, put up the white flag of, what, right now, like, I'm not feeling safe. Like the way this conversation is going, the way you're speaking to me, it's not feeling safe. And I know that sounds like so cheesy and strange, but like, that's what I said. I said, you know what, I think we should end the call and circle back around later because I love you. I know you love me. And like, for whatever reason, this is just like, we're really struggling right now. And that's okay. Like no shame, no blame. Like, I'm sure I could have done a million things better. Like there's no like blame or anything around any of it. But just to like, because there's this period where like we know that there's this new skill we want to get better at, like staying calm, trusting ourselves. And there's going to be a lot of situations where we get up against the wall where, no, my skills aren't that good yet. And that's okay. And that's going to keep happening. And that's how we grow and just keep like, okay, well, what's my like last ditch go-to, skill in the moment when like, this is really, and I think Brené Brown talked about this too. Like there's one time she just like rolled up the window on someone like, it's not a good time for us to talk, because she like felt herself like starting to lose her shit. And she had enough mindfulness and skills to be like, this isn't going to end well. If I let myself lose my shit, it's not going to make things better. So it's better to like strangely be like, I can't talk anymore. And like, not like that you even had someone call you or like, no, I actually have to go. And like, and just like roll up the window and drive away, because that's better. Finding a gracious exit to give yourself the space. Because if you're feeling like I'm really struggling, not taking this personally right now, and I want to freaking tear this person a new one because this is really fucked up. But luckily I have the space. And again, it's, if someone physically attacking you, that's when there's a physical threat, that's when it's like, it's completely appropriate to like, that's when anger is biologically completely appropriate, because you need to fight someone off physically. But assuming there's not a physical threat, anger never makes anything better. It affects our decision making, like our higher cognitive decision making, and it is destructive. We know how destructive anger is, physically destructive, and it's emotionally and spiritually destructive. And that's what it's meant to do when you're being attacked physically, or you need to protect your child who's being attacked physically. But if there's not a physical attack, anger always makes things worse. So figure out how to get back to center before you act. Because if you act out of that place of anger, it is not going to make things better for anybody.
Yeah, exactly. And it's funny that I love that you point to taking space, even as weird as it might sound.
I got to go.
Well, it's just I think a lot of people don't feel like they can. Or
it seems rude, right? It's rude.
It might be
it's
rude. It might be weird. There then theoretically is a conflict that's still open. Most people, at least, any conflict, like I definitely historically totally conflict avoidant. So I would need the conflict to be resolved.
Yeah, a lot of people get stuck with that.
Yeah, as opposed to being like, it's okay.
I love you. I know you love me. Like to me, that's what, and obviously if it's like, a mom at PTA.
By the way, I still struggle with this one. Like this is still like, I'm still in consistent work with like not fearing conflict.
Yeah. Well, so you know what I do when I'm at this point? Sometimes I'll say like, hey, listen, I care about you. I respect you. I know on some level, or I hope on some level you care about me and respect me. I don't know exactly what's going on right now, but like, I care about you. I respect you. So like, maybe we can just put a pin in this and come back to it when we're kind of in a different place. There's something about the time and place right now that like, this seems like it's not going in like a loving direction or a constructive direction. Me, I tend to be warm and fuzzy and like say love a lot, but like a lot of people are gonna be like, I love you, man. But like to use the word respect, that like, and constructive, that like, look, I want to try to figure out how to be constructive on this issue. For whatever reason right now, it doesn't seem like we're coming together. It feels like we're kind of pushing each other apart. So like, I respect you. I always go back to like the respect. Because I do, like, respect is one of my core values. I do respect everyone. And I hope and kind of demand, actually, let's put it that way. I demand respect from others. And if someone's not giving it to me, then I'm not going to play on their team, right? Like, then we're not going to be teammates. And I, luckily in my life, have the control over who I choose to participate with.
Yeah.
And like, there will be people like other moms or something that, like, for whatever reason, just like, no judgments, but like, they don't seem capable of being respectful of other people's, well-being and perspectives and thoughts and feelings. And like, that's where they're at. And like, I'm not going to be in the pool with those people. You know what I mean? Like, we're going to have space. And if I'm forced to interact with them, I'm going to do it very carefully, and keep some boundaries up, because it's not okay to talk to me in a disrespectful way. It's not okay to disrespect me. I am super crystal clear on that. And so for me, when things start to be in a conflict situation, that's my like fallback. Like, look, and I'll say it, like, I never want to hurt your feelings. I respect you. I care about you and your experience and your family or whatever. Like, I care about your perspective. And for whatever reason right now, like, we're having trouble communicating, and that's okay. It's like, I know I'm not perfect. Like, sometimes I might be, I joke, like, I'll use, like, I might be hungry. Maybe I'm just hungry. I might be really hungry right now. My blood sugar's low.
There's lots of things that go into how we show up. Yeah, it's very complex all the time. It doesn't necessarily have to be some sign of some like deep
not good enoughness.
It can be, but it's not.
But again, even that's a judgment, right? So like, I go to like a really deep place on being non-judgmental, that like, we all struggle for particular reasons at particular times. And it's not because we're not good enough. It's because we're pushing ourselves. We're in a growing mode. Right. Yeah. And so when I'm around people that are train wrecks and are behaving in toxic ways, I literally like, my brain still has the reaction of being like, what the fuck, like, what's wrong with this person? And then I know enough to get out of my head and into my heart and remember, like, they're a human being that's struggling with something,
I love
struggling with awareness, not in a judgmental way, but like, we would be compassionate.
Yeah.
We would be respectful of each other. Would, like, those are things that like, we all naturally are wired for that.
Yeah.
And the only time we're not behaving that way and being that is when there's something going on. Like, some people get stuck their entire life. They're in a spiritual illness. Like, same thing with being lazy. This is one of my pet peeves. People are so judgmental around people that are lazy. People are lazy when they're spiritually ill. They're not feeling inspired. They're not feeling connected to something bigger and their deeper purpose, their creativity. Kids being bored, that's a healthy, normal reaction that spurs us into being creative, right? And the only time that we fall into laziness is if something's wrong. Like we're not feeling inspired by all the bright, beautiful, shiny objects around us, right? And that happens.
Yeah. Go, keep going.
But that's not because someone is not good enough. Like, to me, there's like, that's illness, like spiritual illness, mental illness, physical illness. To me, it's all illness that I will be compassionate as I set boundaries around what I allow into my life, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the energetic like weight of things. Like so spiritual illness, how you're saying that, or just any sort of self-defeating talk, or any sort of tough conflict or victim energy around an experience, or so it could be in our own head, or it can be an experience with another.
Something happened,
those, or something in life, some whatever.
The way we were parented, like if our parents were constantly shaming us, like, what's wrong with you? Like, something's wrong with me. And then when something's wrong with you, when you think that something's wrong with you, you don't want to go create stuff. You're like sitting there, like, thinking that something's wrong with you.
Yeah. And it takes effort to see that, but like, just to speak to the weight of it and why that would drive us to not want to get up in the morning and spring out of bed. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I feel so lucky and grateful that my work feels purposeful to me. Like, I've said this before, and it's funny, but like, it might seem like I'm totally down. Look at me, do the funny videos, but that's tough for me. Like, I'm not like that. I have to like work. I have to center to even do this. You know what I mean? Like, and it's not that I'm inauthentic in this moment. I'm here, I'm inauthentic, but this is a version of courage to me.
Yeah, you have to surrender a lot of stuff to do this. Like, I'm not happy with the lighting right now. You can see my veins on the floor. Like, but I'm like, surrender. I'm like, I'm not going to think about that, because if I thought about that, I wouldn't be with you. I wouldn't be
well,
like,
yeah. The reason I have energy for it, though, is that I feel purposeful, that I feel deeply connected to why it's important for me to get up and sit in this chair and talk to you on a recorded video. You know what I mean? Like, that to me is connected to contribution, something bigger than myself, which to me motivates me from a deeper place.
Yeah, that feeling, that connection. Absolutely.
So anyway, it's just like to speak to the energy, though, like of why, like, so the days when I don't want to spring out of bed, those are the days when I have to go, what's going on? What am I not, why am I disconnected from what's up, or what else is on my energy that I could help clear? You know, is there something that I could clear with a loved one or whatever? You know what I'm saying? Like, so doing that consistent checking in with our lives, not both in the work, but also just in life and in ourselves in general.
Yeah. I mean, that's not to plug my book.
Yeah.
Plug my book, but like, those are the 5 pillars. Like, literally, if I'm feeling heavy, I'm like, all right, am I connected with gratitude for all my blessings? Am I feeling compassionate towards myself and towards life?
Yeah.
And am I feeling brave, or am I feeling frightened right now? Because sometimes we're not like aware of what's actually going on. So by checking in and then surrender, is there something I'm fighting? Right? Like, is there something that I'm not surrendering to? And then is there something that I'm not open and curious about, where I'm subconsciously or maybe consciously have judged something to be like not good, or that's it, or there's no additional, like, I think of when I was young, I had like a million different jobs, a lot of which sucked. Like, I worked like in the dining hall at Yale, like, you'd wear the hat and the apron and the outfit. But like, I got paid good money to do that. And then I used that money to go do the things that I loved in life. And so even though it was incredibly humiliating, like,
I was a bus person.
Yeah.
A nice restaurant, baby.
Yeah. And so like, and then you think of like Fast Times at Ridgemont High, right? The pirate. But like, it's that when you have that bigger awareness and connection, because if I just judged working at the dining hall sucks, and that was it, I wouldn't be inspired and energized to go. And I had freaking fun at the dining hall. Like, if I was your server, what do you want? Like, I made it fun, because you can make anything fun. But like you said, checking in with those kind of 5 areas are what I've identified as like a quick, like a 5, and I have a 5-minute morning meditation that you can do for free on my website. So it's like a quick touch base, because really when you're in this kind of centered inner kind of peace state, it is so dynamic, and there's so much flow of that energy, that inspiration, the creativity, the love, the laughter. It is, and the learning, like that growing, that growth.
Yeah.
It's so dynamic and it's so powerful. And that's what this whole kind of inner peace, and like when you're taking things personally, just to circle back around to our original topic.
Well, exactly.
When you're taking things personal, you're not at a state of inner peace.
No,
you're not.
Yeah. And it's funny, I always circle back to, because my general perspective is mindset.
Yeah.
Right. Like, you have the, five pillars, and find your strength and spiritual strength, which I completely resonate with as well. It's just the way that I tend to say it is around mindset.
Yeah.
Is around like recognizing what's the driving thought. And so it's taking things personally is just such an amazing opportunity to practice our personal growth, which sounds so stupid and cheesy. And I say that.
No, but if you want to live a great life, like, don't you want to live a great life?
Hold on a sec. this goes somewhere else.
Okay, go.
I say it like that very deliberately. It's very conscious that I say that judgmentally, because I was the person. So if old me is watching this, I want them to go, yes, it sounds so fucking stupid. Personal growth. Right? Like, but
I always love personal growth.
but at the same time, I was called to it. So my audience, my peeps that end up working with me typically are the people who are like, ugh, I don't want to do that crap. They have a thumbs down in general to the fluffy, fuzzy language.
That's why I love you. Because I'm like so fluffy and fuzzy that like...
Well, and the fluffy, fuzzy language is awesome once you are cool with it. When you're not cool with it, when you're like, I'm going to be some crunchy, whatever, frou-frou, whatever person, that used to be me. And I was called forward to grow, but I'm like, how do I grow without being this like, ugh? So I say it just to say like, yeah, it makes sense that you'd be like, oh God, personal growth. But really, if we look at that from an experience and a sort of execution and learning of skill and mastering of skill, like that for me was so much more palatable. So if we talk about taking things personally, well, how do we navigate that? Oh, we have to personally grow. Yeah, but it's, you know, we can do it in a way that doesn't make us want to like barf.
Puke. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it's good stuff, girl.
Awesome.
Is there anything else? Where again, we like talk and it's instant, it's over.
No, I know, and it's great because like I made notes of things that this sparked that like we can talk about in the future.
Oh my God, so much. This is so great. I love you so much.
You're brilliant.
Thank you all for being here. Email us anytime. I'll put the info here.
Thanks everybody.
Bye, honey.